This 69 Nova started out as a $400 shell. I wanted to build a budget build where I only spent $5,000 and I did it pretty quick. So I got a subframe stuck under it, got it home, and started working on it. After getting the car home and pulling all the mess out of it, looking at the floors, I decided I was going to put floor pan patches in it. The floorboard probably needed to be completely replaced, but for the budget, I was going to just put patches in. It didn't take long to get the floor pans welded in, and then I moved on to the rear windshield area that was completely rusted out. I welded in some new metal there and also had to pull the deck filler out that was also completely rusted. Now once I got the metal welded into the back windshield channel, got the deck filler replaced, I was pretty happy with that. I moved on to the trunk floor. Just like with the floor pans, I decided to put a patch panel in the trunk instead of replacing the whole floor. I got the center of the trunk cut out, and then I put some rust proofing on the gas tank braces. The patch panel for the trunk fit pretty good. I did have to stand on it to get it welded to the gas tank braces. Once I got that done, I beat around the edge of it and I did my final welding before I painted it. Once I finished with the trunk, I started replacing the taillight panel. The old one was mainly rusted out around the weather strip lip, even though the bottom was okay, but I decided to replace the whole panel, and I got to use my new spot welder. Once I finished up with that, I started on the mechanical side of things. For the engine, I decided I was going to buy a used 350 from a subscriber. When I got it home, it didn't turn over too easy, so I pulled the heads off and found some rust in the cylinders. The rust wasn't that bad, but I didn't want to build a grenade, so I decided that I was going to clean the block up, hone it, and then I dropped in a rotating assembly from Eagle. I started with a new cam and lifters from Summit. It's a flat tappet, so I'll have to be very careful when I go to break it in and get the engine started up. Then I got the crank in, the rods and pistons in, I got everything put together, torqued down to spec, and after that was done, I put in a brand new oil pump so that I wouldn't have any issues with oil pressure. There was nothing wrong with the heads that came on the engine, so I checked the valve spring pressure in them, cleaned them up really well, put them on the engine, and then I torqued them down with brand new head bolts. With the engine finished up, it was time to move on to the transmission. Now, I've never built a transmission before, an automatic. I've done work to them, but never done a full build on one. I picked up a core that was really nasty, but I was able to get it apart, figure out how everything went back together, cleaned it up, put all new clutches and seals and gaskets and everything in there, and used a couple of YouTube videos and a couple of books to make sure that I was doing it like I was supposed to. New pump gears, getting it together was really the most difficult part, and checking the clearances. Now that the engine and transmission were done, I jumped back on the body. I cleaned up and painted the firewall to make it look decent. Then I started rebuilding my control arms with new bushings and ball joints. I took a used subframe that I had bought that had subframe connectors welded to it. I cut those off, cleaned it up, painted it. Then I got the subframe installed in the car with brand new polyurethane subframe bushings. Once I had the subframe installed, lined up, and torqued down, I could put my control arms on along with new coil springs. It wasn't very easy to get the coil springs compressed without an engine in the car, but I was able to get it done, got my spindles on, and my drum brake hubs on. Then I moved on to the steering gear box and all of the steering linkage, tie rod ends, and all of that. With the subframe complete, the car was now a roller. I put some wheels on it, and I started getting the engine and transmission ready to put in the car. With the engine and transmission installed, I could start on the brakes. I put brand new drum brakes on the rear, brand new drums, shoes, wheel cylinders, everything. For the front of the car, originally I was going to use drum brakes, but decided that a disc brake kit was going to be better, even though it probably put me really close to being over budget on my $5,000. But I was having a really hard time getting drums for the front of the car because no one seemed to have any in stock. With new brakes on the front and rear and all new lines and hoses, I decided it was time to move on to the dash panel. I had planned to patch the panel that was there, but the more work I did to it, the more rust I found, so I just installed a new panel instead. Once that was done, I could move on to some other things on the car that were going to need attention. With a long list of little things that needed to be done, I got started on changing out the wiring, fixing the steering column with a new turn signal switch and new key switch, started putting the front end together with front sheet metal that I'd paid $200 for. Now, I did put a new radiator support in because the one I'd planned on using was a little bit too rusty, and by this point, I already had the car sold to a subscriber. With the headlights installed, I could start getting the grille put in, get the headlight bezels put in, and then finally put the front bumper on. With the front end put together, I set a hood on the car to see how it was going to look and was really happy with how this was coming together. After that, I moved on to the rear of the car. I put on a bumper that came with some parts I bought from a subscriber, then a deck lid that was original one for the car. Then I changed out the $200 Convo Pros I'd bought from a subscriber with some new rally wheels and brand new Cooper Cobra tires. With the new wheels and tires, this car looked great. So then I started getting all the small accessories on the front of the engine so I could fire this thing up for the very first time in probably about 30 years. And now for the first time in 30 years, this car is about to move under its own power. Let's take it for a test drive. All right, let's try this. So we got it out of the shop, backed it up the driveway, no issues, fixed to hop in it and drive around the block. Go check and see if the reverse lights work. Makes it around the block, but we'll see. It runs and it shifts, so I'm pretty happy. So it runs and drives pretty good. I'm very happy with it. It idles nice and smooth, got a little bit of chop to it, nothing bad. Transmission that I built, my first one ever, shifted and ran just fine, so I'm really happy with that. I don't have a big puddle of anything under it. That's a good thing. And all we have left is to put the hood on it and the hood hinges, put the glass in the front and the back, and then put the shifter cover and stuff like that on. So not a whole lot of stuff we need to do to finish this car. Okay, so that went well. Now, there's a few things with this thing that still need to be done. The front and rear glass, obviously. And then I don't have any shocks on it. So the reason I don't have any shocks on it, because the springs that I put on the front of this thing were some that I got from somebody for free. They had been cut. I didn't realize that, and I really didn't realize that they had been cut a lot, and they're basically too low. So when I went to put the shocks in the front of it, the shocks were completely bottomed out because it's too low, like way low. It's also a bit uneven. The driver's side is a little bit lower than the passenger side, but I can't really align it because once I get the height set, I can do the alignment. Right now, the camber and all that's going to be off. If I change the height of the car after I set the camber, it'll be off. But it did drive pretty good, just considering that. Now I probably didn't get over 45 miles an hour, but it still felt pretty good. Now, I still need to remount my heater control, which does work. All the heat stuff works. I've got some under dash lighting I've got to hook up. I've got to put the cover over the shifter and all that stuff. But I do have my interior, my dome light works. So that's pretty good. All my dash lights work, my reverse lights work. The brake light works. And the temperature light was starting to come on as I pulled into the shop. So I need to check and see if I can find a shroud. And also, I don't know what temperature this sending unit is set at. So I may put a regular gauge in it just so I'll know. All right, I'm pretty happy with this thing. It runs, it drives, it shifted through all 3 gears. So apparently I'm a transmission builder now because I didn't think that would happen. It did start running a little warm at the very end, but I'm not sure where the temperature sensor is set. I'm going to put a regular gauge on it and leave it like that so we'll know. I've got all the idiot lights on the dash working, but gauges would be better in every scenario. Still got to get front end sorted out like I talked about. Still got to get the glass in it. And I'm going to end up doing the glass myself because getting a glass guy right now to come out here and do anything is just impossible apparently. But it's going to be okay. I'm pretty happy with it. I've got to do some more driving around and I've got to find out. I've got a little bit of piston slap when it's cold. When it warms up, that goes away. I got to figure out and make sure that's what that is and make sure it's nothing detrimental. But pretty happy with it. We'll see you guys next time.